Good morning. Good morning. It's me again. Since last time I finished White Sargasso Sea, today I'm gonna continue reading another book. This book we've written we've read it before, but I couldn't insist reading on it. I'm gonna start reading again. I'm gonna reread it and then try to finish the book. Okay, let's go. In my younger, okay, wait. The Great Gatsby by F. Scott Fitzgerald. Chapter 1. In my younger and more vulnerable years, my father gave me some advice that I've been turning over in my mind ever since. Hold on. Whenever you feel like criticizing anyone, he told me, just remember that all the people in this world haven't had the advantages that you've had. He didn't say any more, but we've always been unusually communicative in a reserved way. And I understood that he meant a great deal more than that. In consequence, I am inclined to reserve all judgment. To reserve all judgments, a habit that has opened up many curious natures to me, and also made me the victim of not a few veteran bores. The abnormal man is quick to detect and attach itself to the quality when it appears in a normal person. So it came about that in college I was unjustly accused for being a politician. I was privy to the secret griefs of the wild. Unknown men. Most of the confidences were unsought. Frequently, I have feigned sleep, preoccupation, or a hostile levity when I realized by someone unmistakable sign that an intimate revelation was curving on the horizon. For the intimate revelations of young men, or at least the terms in which they express them, are usually plagiaristic and marred by obvious suppressions. Reserving judgments is a matter of infinite hope. I am still a little afraid of missing something if I forget that, as my father snobbishly suggested. And I snobbishly repeat, a sense of fundamental decencies is parceled out unequally at birth. And after boosting this way of my tolerance, I come to the admission that it has a limit. Conduct may be founded on the conduct may be founded on on the hard rock or the wet marshes. But after a certain point, I don't care what is found anon. When I came back from the East last autumn, I felt that I wanted the world to be uniform, and at a sort of moral attention forever. I wanted no more riotous excursions which privileges glimpses into the human heart. Only Gatsby, the man who gives his name to this book, was exempt from my reaction. Gatsby, who represented everything for which I have an unaffected scorn. If personality is an unbroken series of successful gestures, then there was something gorgeous about him, some heightened sensitivity to the promises of life, as if he were related to one of those intricate machines that register earthquakes 10,000 miles away. This responsiveness had nothing to do with that flabby impressionability, which is dignified under the name of the creative temperament. It was an extraordinary gift for hope, a romantic readiness such as I have never found in any other person, and which is not likely I shall ever find again. No, Gatsby turned out all right at the end. It is what preyed on Gatsby, what foul dust floated in the wake of his dreams that temporarily closed out of my interest in the abortive sorrows. And short-winded elations of men. My family have been prominent. Well-to-do people in this western city for 3 generations. The Carraways are something of a clan, and we have a tradition that we are descended from dukes of Buccleuch, but the actual founder of my line was my grandfather's brother, who came here in 51. Sent a substitute to the Civil War, and started a wholesale hardware business that my father carries on today. I never saw this great uncle, but I'm supposed to look like him, with special reference to the father hard-boiled painting that things in father's office. I graduated from New Haven in 1915, just a quarter of a century after my father, and a little later I participated in that delayed Teutonic migration known as Great War. I enjoyed the counter raid so thoroughly that I came back restless. Instead of being the warm of center of the world, the Middle East now seemed like the raised edge of the universe. So I decided to go east and learn the bond business. Everybody I knew was in the bond business, so I supposed it could support one more single man. All my aunts and uncles talked it over as if they were choosing a prep school for me, and finally said yes. Why, yes, with very grave, hesitant faces. My father agreed to finance me for a year, and after various delays, I came east permanently. I thought in the spring of 2022. The practical thing was to find rooms in the city, but it was warm season, and I had just left the country of wide lawns and friendly trees. So when a young man and a coffee suggested that we take a house together in a commuting town, it sounded like a great idea. He found the house, a weather-beaten cardboard bungalow at 80 a month. But at the last minute, the firm ordered him to Washington, and I went out to the country alone. I had a dog, at least I had him for a few days until he ran away. And an old Dodge and a Finnish woman, who made my bed and cooked breakfast and muttered Finnish wisdom to herself over the electric stove. The electric stove. It was lonely for a day or so until one morning some man, more recently arrived than I, stopped me on the road. "How do you get to West Egg Village?" he asked helplessly. I told him, and as I walked on, I was lonely no longer. I was a guide, a pathfinder, and a regional settler. He had casually conferred on me the freedom of he had casually conferred on me the freedom of the neighborhood. And so, with the sunshine and the great bursts of leaves, just as things grow in fast movies, I had that familiar conviction that life was beginning over again with the summer. There was so much to read, for one thing, and so much fine health to be pulled down out of the young, breath-giving air. I bought a dozen volumes on banking and credit and investment securities, and they took on my shelf in red and gold like new money from the mint. Promising to unfold the shining secrets that only Maida and Morgan and Messina know. And I had the high intention of reading many other books besides. I was rather literary in college. One year I wrote a series of very solemn and obvious editorials for the Yale News. And now I was going to bring back all such things into my life and become again that most limited for all specialists. Well, the well-rounded man. This isn't just an epigram. Oh my goodness. Life is much more successfully looked at from an angle window. After all, it was a matter of chance that I should have rented a house in one of the strangest communities in North America. It was it was on that richest land which extends itself due east of New York, and where they are, among other natural curiosities, two unusual formations of land. 20 miles from the city, a pair of enormous eggs, identical in contour, and separated only by a courtesy bay. Just out into the most domesticated body of the salt water in the Western Hemisphere. The great wet barnyard of Long Island Sound. They're not perfect ovals. Like the egg in the Columbus story, they're both crushed flat at the contact. They're both crushed flat at the contact end, but their physical resemblance must be source of perpetual wonder to the gulls that fly overhead. To the wingless, a more interesting phenomenon is their dissimilarity in every particular except shape and size. I lived I lived at West Egg, the less fashionable of the two, though this is a most superficial tag to express the bizarre and not a little sinister contrast between them. My house was at the very tip of the egg, only 50 yards from the sound, and squeezed between the huge places and that rented for 12 or 15,000 a season. The one on my right was a colossal affair. Colossal affair. By any standard. It was a factual imitation of some Hotel de Ville in Normandy, with a tower in one side, spanking new under a thin beard of raw ivy. Oh my days. And a marble swimming pool, and more than 40 acres of lawn and garden. It was Gatsby's mansion. Or rather, I didn't know Mr. Gatsby. It was a mansion inhabited by a gentleman of that name. My own house was an eyesore, but it was a small eyesore, and it had been overlooked, so I had a view of the water, partial view of the neighbor's lawn, and the consoling proximity of millionaires, all for $80 a month. Across the grassy bay, the white palaces of fashionable East Egg glittered along the water. And the history of summer really begins on the evening I drove over there to have dinner with the Tom Buchanans. Tom Buchanans. Daisy was my second cousin, once removed, and a non-Tom in college. And just after the war, I spent 2 days with them in Chicago. Her husband, among various physical accomplishments, had been one of the most powerful ends that ever played in football at New Haven. The national figure in a way, one of those men who reached such a acute limited excellence. At 21 that everything afterwards savors of anticlimax. His family were enormously wealthy. Even in college, his freedom with money was a matter of reproach. Matter for reproach. But now he left Chicago and come east in a fashion that rather took your breath away. For instance, he'd brought down a string of polo ponies. Polo ponies from Lake Forest. Dude. It was hard to realize that a man in my own generation was wealthy enough to do that. Why they came east, I don't know. That spent a year in France for no particular reason, and then drifted here unrestfully wherever people played polo and were rich together. This was permanent move, and Daisy over the telephone, but I didn't believe it. I had no sight into Daisy's heart, but I felt that Tom would drift on forever seeking, a little wistfully. For the dramatic turbulence of some irrecoverable football game. And so it happened that on a warm, windy evening, I drove over to East Egg to see two old friends whom I scarcely knew at all. Their house was even more elaborate than expected. A cheerful red and wine Georgian colonial mansion overlooking the bay. The lawn started at the beach and ran towards the front door for a quarter of a mile, jumping over sundials and brick walls and burning gardens. Finally, when it reached the house, drifting up the side and bright vines. As though from the momentum of its run, the front was broken by a line of French windows, glowing now with reflected gold by a line. And wide open to the warm, windy afternoon. And Tom Buchanan, in riding clothes, was standing with the legs apart on the front porch. He had changed since the New Haven years. Now he was a sturdy, straw-haired man of 30, with a rather hard mouth and a supercilious manner. two shining, arrogant eyes had established dominance over his face and gave him to the appearance of always leaning aggressively forward. Not even the effeminate swunk of his riding clothes could hide the enormous power of that body. He seemed to feel these glistening boots. Until he strained the top lacing. And you could see a great pack of muscle shifting when his shoulder moved under his thin coat. It was a body capable of enormous leverage. A cruel body. His speaking voice, a gruff, husky tenor. Holy hell. Added to the impression of fractiousness he conveyed. There was a touch of paternal contempt in it. Even toward people he liked, and there were men at New Haven who had hated his guts. Well, I think that's for today. There are a lot of new words that I don't know. Yeah, I'll continue reading tomorrow then. See ya.